You could change which claims are compensated in the vaccine injury compensation program. There's a lot of ways that you can influence those future lawsuits and pending lawsuits while you are Secretary of HHS. And I'm asking you to commit right now that you will not take a financial stake in every one of those lawsuits so that what you do as Secretary will also benefit you financially down the line.
I'll comply with all the ethical guidelines.
That's not the question. You and I, you have said
You're asking me, Senator, you're asking me not to sue vaccine pharmaceutical companies.
Not.
Boy, that woman needs some yoga. This was just a taste of how Democratic senators treated Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in his confirmation hearing for his position to head the Department of Health and Human Services. Senator Warren's performance is a standout one, though. Senator Warren loves to dress up and pretend that she is a fighter for the middle class, a slayer of corporate overlords, the faithful warrior who never takes a dime from special interests, who that really describes as the very man she's grilling, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. But Warren does not want you to think that. She tried to paint RFK as another shill, willing to cash in beliefs in order to rake in profit. But that is actually who Elizabeth Warren has been, at least from the outside. This outrage is to distract from the fact in 2019, as she was ramping up her failed presidential bid, she was caught red-handed accepting donations from the Sackler family, the company behind distributing OxyContin to Middle America. Some argue purposely. Those donations went all the way back to 2012. Bernie Sanders is another pretender.
Agree with me that the United States should join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a human right. Yes? No.
This swashbuckling socialist who rails against the billionaires and Big Pharma also in 2019 was pinched for receiving donations from Lynn McCroy of Pfizer, no less. So was this display just bare-knuckle partisan politics? Or politicians bought and owned by Big Pharma trying to sink a man committed to helping get America healthy again? Here to help us decipher some of this, best-selling author, investigative journalist Seamus Bruner, friend of the program, author of Controligarchs. Seamus, what did you think of the hearing yesterday as these two leading socialists started kind of siding with Big Pharma?
It was painful to watch. I mean, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Michael Bennet of Colorado, Ron Wyden of Oregon. This was really ugly, ugly stuff coming from these guys. And it's obvious these are the top pharma recipients in the Senate, among them anyway. I mean, $10 million almost is what Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Ron Wyden, Michael Bennet have taken from the healthcare industrial complex, a huge chunk of that pharmaceutical money. I'm glad you keyed in on the Sackler family giving to Elizabeth Warren for a very long time. It wasn't just like one donation. Like you said, it was since 2012. Wow. And there's plenty of other examples of Elizabeth Warren. She alone has taken more than $5 million from healthcare and pharmaceutical companies. So that's, methinks they doth protest too much. And we've got a big report that we're about to drop on the big pharma industry. I mean, it all started with a simple question. Donald Trump, by appointing Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has made Make America Healthy Again part of the agenda. And you think to yourself, who could be against making America healthy again? And it's actually, the results would shock you. It's a lot of people. The healthcare industrial complex is a $20 trillion industry. Nobody can really fathom how big that is. It's 20% of the GDP every year spent on healthcare services. Pharmaceutical products and the big pharma industry is a major slice of that pie. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will have full power over HHS, as Elizabeth Warren noted. So there's a lot of interests interlocking here. Of course, you've got just the pharmaceutical companies have spent billions of dollars, $6 billion on the political industry. So buying off senators like Elizabeth Warren and Ron Wyden and Bernie Sanders. But what do they get for this money? Why would they want politicians in their pocket? It's obvious for a number of things. First of all, accountability. They want to regulate themselves. They've paid over $100 billion in fines for things like false advertising and making false claims, fraud, bribery, kickbacks. $100 billion, that's a ton of money. So to get regulators to look the other way, that's a huge thing. And then also taxpayers have spent, just in the last 15 years or so, we the taxpayers have spent almost $250 billion, $250 billion helping develop their products. So through NIH and grants from the National Institutes of Health, which Bobby Kennedy will oversee, we fund the development of the drugs, and then our health insurance or out-of-pocket costs, then we make these companies enormously rich. And so this is just a totally out of whack industry where they're regulating themselves. They're getting taxpayer handouts to the tune of $250 billion. And then they've got a bunch of other industries that they buy off. The media, I mean, $3 billion last year alone to buy the silence of the major corporate media companies, brought to you by Pfizer commercials, as has kind of been a famous tagline that's gone around. Academia, I mean, they
it's a deadly meme.
Yeah, it's a deadly meme for sure.
Are you saying, Seamus, Seamus, are you saying that these are the folks who are going to be so unhappy because people like Dr. Fauci's wife are no longer going to be overseeing ethics at NIH?
Yeah, you're talking about Christine Grady. I mean, that's the conflicts of interest in the NIH, CDC, all of HHS are staggering.
Disgusting.
I mean, just the fact that Fauci's wife was approving drugs is totally unethical. You've got all of these panels, these FDA panels that approve drugs, where it's just a constant revolving door going in and out of companies like Pfizer. The FDA head has been typically a Pfizer executive. They go work, or Pfizer or other big pharmaceutical companies. They go work at Pfizer, then they come and regulate the drugs from Pfizer, then they go back and get the payday through the revolving door. It's one of the most corrupt agencies we have is HHS, with all of these conflicts in the revolving door.
Yeah. And RFK's nomination and RFK's platform has really exposed that, because this has been a blight in our system that have affected our children, our families, everybody for decades, because the influence that Big Pharma has is deeply embedded in both sides of the political aisle. Both Republicans and Democrats have been dipping into that fund. And for the first time, all of that seems to be unveiled. I mean, let me ask you this. As you're watching the hearing, as you watched the hearing yesterday, what comes to mind when you think of the influences who are going to try and stop RFK's nomination? Do these big pharma entities have the kind of power now on Capitol Hill that they did before Trump came into office?
Well, they have a lot of power. They've bought off a lot of senators, like you said, on both sides. I always found it kind of funny that both sides can accuse the other. Republicans can accuse Democrats and vice versa, that the other side are shills for Big Pharma. And the funny thing is, they're both right. So we have plenty of pharma shills on both sides taking millions and millions of dollars. The question is whether or not John Thune's going to be able to whip the votes for Donald Trump. Donald Trump has the mandate, and anybody who bucks his nominees and does not vote to confirm his nominees ought to be in a big trouble. So the question is, who's got more power, Donald Trump or Big Pharma? And I would not bet against Donald Trump.
Nicole Shanahan, the RFK Jr.'s former running mate, she comes from the Google world. She comes from Silicon Valley, little known. I mean, she's a billionaire in her own right. She has threatened to dump money into primaries against anyone who politically opposes RFK in this process. Does that work? Do you think it will actually have long-term effects?
Yeah, it remains to be seen. I saw her tweet at Ralph Warnock saying, and she's a leftist. She's from Google. I mean, I maybe over an apology, because I did not think that she was a great choice for RFK, but she's redeeming herself. She tweets at Ralph Warnock or Raphael Warnock that she funded him initially she was a big fan of him, and to see his anti-RFK stance, she said she's going to go fund his primary challengers. I tend to think that they're, I mean, it's a huge threat. I mean, you know, a primary ends the gravy train if they don't win in their primary. So I think it is a credible threat. I think it's a scary threat for them. At the same time, I can see these people have huge egos and they'd hate to just be bullied around. So, you know, it remains to be seen. I don't expect that many, if any Democrats will vote to confirm, although you know, we might be surprised. You know, RFK Jr., as we know, has been a lifelong Democrat. The Kennedy family is Democrat Brahmin, so he may be able to peel a few off. But I'm not sure about Shanahan's threats. You know, going against the party is a much more surefire way to lose your seat in a primary. So that remains to be seen. But I appreciate her nonetheless sticking up for what's right.
Real quick, last 30 seconds. What's your rubric for judging the authenticity of some of these transformations, these political transformations? I think you and I see it similarly in the sense that, you know, we wait for action. We wait for the money to flow to decide. But even the money is not really a great measure to decide the authenticity of someone going from being a Silicon Valley bro to someone who is suddenly on the MAGA train. What's your rubric?
Yeah, well, I don't put faith in any man, honestly. I don't know that anybody's coming to save us. So I hate, you know, not to be a little dark there, but it's actually it's relieving to know. I judge them by their actions. So if there's good actions, I'll applaud them. I've done that repeatedly with Elon Musk, even though I am very wary of the transhumanist ambitions. And then the same goes for Shanahan and anyone else. I mean, if they're going to do what's right for the country, I'll applaud those actions. And if they betray us, I'll also say, I told you so.
Seamus, a pleasure to have you on. Thank you, as always.
Thanks, Chanel.
Coming up, we are making artful language great again with Mel K. Stick around for our word of the day.